Hey everybody, this is Tanner Glant, joined by my brother Thomas. Today we have a very special guest. Born in Ontario, but adopted Maritimer, played at Mount Allison University, the first woman to ever do play-by-play for the QMJHL game, and a TSN reporter for the Montreal Canadiens, Kenzie Lalonde. Kenzie, thank you for joining us today, and how are you doing today?
I'm great, guys. We're reunited. So this is so far
Reunited.
a great day. We just saw each other not long ago. So
Almost a
we've been
month
busy.
ago now? I think it's almost been a month now.
Yeah, isn't that freaky?
I
I
know. It's
know.
already mid-August and it's like September's right around the corner. So
Hockey season is right around the corner, Tanner, as I
yes,
stare at that Montreal Canadiens jersey behind you.
yeah, that's ready to go. So
I'm starting to get the itch now for it.
I know you get to like mid, like when the training camp rosters start coming out and it's just like, okay, let's get to preseason now. It's like it's go time.
Yeah.
But let's start talking about your early hockey days when you were growing up. So when did you start playing hockey, and who were the players that you looked up to growing up?
Yeah, I started playing the second I could walk. My dad threw me in skates immediately. So I don't know if I chose hockey, but hockey chose me. So grew up playing my whole life, like in Stittsville, Ontario. And then I switched over to girls hockey. I think it was around Adam. And I fell in love with the game even more the second I walked into a room and had like 25 other girls that loved the game as much as I did. I was set on playing women's hockey moving forward. But I still growing up in the West End of Ottawa in Stittsville, I naturally grew up an Ottawa Senators fan. So for me, though, the guys that I admired were not like, of course, I respected Daniel Alfredson, Wade Redden, like Phillips, the staple players at that time when I was growing up. But for me, it was, Ray Emery at the time, Brian McGrattan. He's the reason I wore number 16. I just thought his edge, that mohawk, I always gravitated towards a guy with some spunk and some personality on the ice. So for me, I always had my eyes on those guys, and it was nice to be able to grow up in a market where I could go to NHL games from a young age and really adopt, I guess, a love for the NHL at a young age. And then as I kind of kept going on and playing and learning more about the women's game and in the national stage. I mean, guys, I was never good enough to ever go to a tryout camp or play, but I started to adopt the knowledge of what the Olympics was and thought how cool it was that there were women training their whole lives to play hockey and go to the Olympics. So I really gained a newfound respect to the sport when I tuned in a little more to the Olympics. But I love the game so much. I keep loving it and kind of channel that passion into a career now.
Okay, I gotta talk about Ottawa. Don't get distracted by the Montreal jersey behind me. We talked about this before, but McGrath didn't play long in Ottawa. So there was a while that he wasn't there. So after that, who was your favorite player? Who was your go-to?
Yeah. So, well, I think it was him. It was Marian Hossa Day. Spezza was still there, like the heater, like the pizza line. I think
Yeah,
they'll always be a staple in my
yes.
head. And I was a big like Antoine Vermette fan. Of course, like Carlson's almost 10-year career there. I became a fan of his. But yeah, I think McGrattan went from the Ottawa to Calgary, I want to
That
say,
sounds
Mhm.
right.
or maybe to the States first. So a little bit of everyone there, I think. It
Okay,
kind
see,
of just and Mike Fisher. Oh my gosh, how dare
yeah,
I
you
forget?
can't forget Fisher. Yeah. No, yeah, because
Fish,
I grew up
Peterborough boy.
I grew up a Hossa fan, so he was my go-to guy. I started collecting like every jersey. I'm almost there just because I'm dedicated. I followed his whole career. So
Do you
he
have
was
his like international jerseys?
no, I don't have his internationals. So I'm just going for NHL right now, then we'll see where it goes from there. But like
Awesome.
that was what I don't know why I was stuck with him. So it was just like that's who got me into the Ottawa Senators. But and then you can't forget Marcel Hossa, like he played for Montreal. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of my biggest memories that I have of just being my diehard Sens fan phase, I think was when they made the run to '07 in the cup
mhm.
final playing Anaheim. And me and my friend would try and ride our bikes or run around I was on a crescent at the time. So the second the Sens would score, we would do a lap with our jerseys and our flags and try and get cars to honk at us and then get back in house in time to like in our minds, we were just missing the replay, but obviously we're missing a significant portion of the game doing that whole lap. And then we'd get back inside, and then the second they'd score again, we'd grab our bikes and run and do another lap. So for me, that '07 run was peak fandom for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
For most Sens fans, really.
Yeah.
Well, 2017, right? They made another run for it, but they didn't make it.
It wasn't
to the cup
finals,
final.
though. It wasn't finals.
Right.
Chris Kunitz
Right.
in that double overtime. So,
but they're looking good now. I like this new energy of Stützle. I think in Kachuk, they're really starting to develop a new identity. So I think there's a new wave of Sens fans coming.
I think that 2017 run, if they would have went to the finals, I think they would have taken the cup. I mean, it's hard to say matchups.
Nashville?
It's hard. Yeah, against Nashville. I think they would have taken them, but we'll never know.
We won't.
All right. So I went on a little tangent there, but go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah. So after high school, you went to Mount Allison University here in New Brunswick. How did you decide on Mount Allison, and how was the adjustment moving from Ontario to the Maritimes? Because I'm assuming that was probably the first time you were away from home.
Exactly. And my first time to the Maritimes, really, my recruiting trip was my first time ever on a flight to the Maritimes. So there was an adjustment period. Moving there with my family, we piled in my car, and my parents moved me into residence that year. And I'll never forget just driving down the highway. That's that gap between Moncton and Sackville, like 42 clicks, I think. I know that off by heart. Being just sitting there and looking around and wondering where all the cars were. And that was my first, okay, we're getting into a different pace here in New Brunswick. But I first heard of the university from a student teacher at the time in grade 12. She was a graduate of Mount Allison University, and she played hockey there. And her name was Andrea Switalski. And I was talking to her. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to keep playing. I had been on a few other recruiting trips at the time to a few Division III schools in the States, but just nothing stuck, it didn't feel right. And when I was speaking to her, I was considering maybe going to St. FX University just as a student, because I heard how great the Maritimes were. So there was something in my mind that was like pulling me towards the East Coast, despite the fact that I really had never been there. And she recommended I check out the school. She thinks I could find that balance of playing hockey, but also having a life, having a social life, being a part of other clubs and communities at the school. And she was not wrong. That was 100% what, the experience I got. I did 4 years there. I even did a 5th year, despite the fact that I already graduated, just because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to stop playing hockey. So I took out a student loan for that final year of university, just so I could play another year of hockey and figure out what I wanted to do. And it was in that final year that I started to work in television. So I'm forever grateful for that, for taking a chance on myself and sticking around another year, because those memories are still, like, people always say university is the best time of your life, and I am a huge advocate for that. My time at Mount Allison in little old Sackville holds, it is very special to me. I have like photos of it on my wall, because there's always a little piece of Sackville wherever I go in my home. So
Nice.
I miss it a lot.
Yeah. So what did you do when you were there? Like, did you find it, like, I don't know what the population difference would be from where you lived before, but did you find it quite a difference in what there was to do for activities and stuff?
Oh yeah. The size of the university was the same size as my high school.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And to me, the residence experience, I moved in with a friend that was actually also from Ottawa. She decided to come to Mount Allison as well. So I think having that buddy go through the new experiences of Frosh Week and being away from home, and how do you do laundry, and what should I eat, and also play hockey as well. It was nice to go through that with a friend, but her and I certainly learned the trials and tribulations of living in a small town and waking up and going to practice and then going to class and trying to find time to do homework. And there was a lot of learning in that first year, but I like diet, guys. Oh, that's all right. But it was great. And a lot, like, there's a saying that's, the people make the place. And I think that's what makes Sackville so special, is all the people we met along the way, because there wasn't really much to do. We would go for drives around town late at night to chit chat and catch up, or my goodness, what else did we do? We would just usually we'd toss a football with a lot of guys at what was then Macaulay Field. Now they have a beautiful new turf field, but it used to just be mud, and it had a lot of character. So we would spend a lot of late nights there, just tossing a football or kicking a soccer ball around when we didn't have much to do.
Well, looking at the hockey side of it, the women's program was, I'd say, pretty successful when you were playing there. You guys made the playoffs a couple times. I think you went to the finals there once. Maybe just touch on that playoff run to the finals, and maybe what was your favorite moment at Mount Allison?
Thomas, that's such a hard question. My favorite memory. Oh, I don't even really have one favorite memory. That run though, yes, that's the furthest our program's gotten, I think, still to date.
Yeah, I was
Or
looking
maybe
at it.
they
Yeah,
won the year before I got there.
I think they went to the finals the year before you got there, and then you guys went to the
Yes.
finals again. I think that's the only two times you've got into the finals. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good time. That run was very special though, because our team I would say we had more skilled players years prior and years after, but there was just something special about the group we were that year. I think chemistry is a really important piece to a winning hockey team, and we found chemistry really early on in our season. And it was also the year we had a strike. So for a good chunk of that hockey season, we weren't in classes. So we were kind of understanding what a professional athlete's day to day was like. You would wake up, go to practice, take a nap, maybe go back, work out, and then wake up and do it all over again. So you really were living for game day, and that we were thriving in that environment. We didn't have much else to think about at that time. So we were really able to do a lot of team bonding. We had a lot of big family meals. And I think it was those little details that translated on the ice. Our goaltender, I believe, was second or third string at the time, Kate O'Brien, and she came back from Christmas and went on a run. Like no one could get by her. She ended up being the starting goaltender. It took us all the way to that final deciding game at UDM facility in Moncton, and we lost, unfortunately. But the game before that, to clinch that third and final game, was at home in Sackville at that Memorial Arena, and it was packed. I had never, to this day, I don't think I've ever seen that arena that full before. And we scored with just under 2 minutes to go to force that game 3. And it's funny, it's like on YouTube. I was showing a friend the other day. He's like, what kind of player were you? And I was like, let me show you. So the quality's crap, but they have a clip of the goal that was scored by Chelsea King right at the end of it. And just seeing that clip brought me all the way back to that special run. And I think it all came down to our coach at the time, who was Zach Ball. He poured his heart and soul into that program and really found a way to rally us behind him. And it's definitely a year I'll never forget, because we didn't do too good after that year, guys.
Yeah. But I mean, well, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you were as a player, but I mean, you were also named captain. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, I was honored to be named captain going into my 4th year, and then I stuck around for a 5th year. And that meant a lot to me. I think I am a player who, how would I describe the kind of player I was?
Not Brian
like
McGrattan.
No. Although not so much. In my, what was it, my 2nd year, I was like a responsible left winger, I would say. I was smart. I was smart. So much so in my 2nd year, one of our defenders got into med school last minute. So my coach came over to me and said, hey, would you ever consider defense? Like, you would be a top 4D, you'll get way more ice time. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was like a 4th or 3rd line winger. So I was like, sure, haven't played D since Adam Hockey. Let's do this. And I did quite well. I was the leading scorer and was part of the power play. And I really unlocked like a new scoring skill set that I was able to carry with me into the left wing position as I moved on. So I am grateful for that stint on defense. I think that accelerated my my confidence as a player as I went on. But I was also I would say I'd consider myself a lead by example kind of leader. I didn't have all these big speeches, but I just know from some of the girls that I'm now friends with that were younger than me at the time, they would always just say, we really admired your work ethic. And you didn't say too much in big moments, but just we would like really we really admired the way you kind of move through life. So I really do admire that. And some of those girls are still some of my best friends to this day. So I was always The one thing I think I was a stickler on was always the stereo. You know, if a rookie
Yeah.
forgot the stereo, we'd have to
And
fix that.
yeah, I mean, you gotta have some rules, right?
Yeah, that was maybe the one thing that they knew I was a little hot-headed on.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it was a good academic experience for sure.
Well, during your time at Mount Allison, that's when you started interviewing players and volunteering at Eastlink TV. How did that opportunity come about? And at what point did you think that, hey, this might be a career opportunity for me?
Yeah, again, as someone who grew up a sports fan, hockey fan, I would watch Sports Center every morning.
Mhm.
Holly Horton was someone I admired who would be on the desk every morning. And I always thought that would be a cool job, but studied business and never really dug into it at all. And it wasn't until my fourth, fifth year that I started, hosting some YouTube interview segments with players at our school. And that kind of was stemmed from our athletic director at the time, Pierre Arsenal, who we sat down together one day and he knew media, sports interviewing was something that I always thought would be interesting to try. And he really gave me the space to go rent out a camera, pick up a microphone, and start interviewing players for our athletic YouTube channel. So I'm grateful for him to just give me the space to say, go try this, go figure it out, and we'll be behind you every step of the way. So I'm thankful for that because half the time the mic didn't work. The camera operator was my roommate. We were just, if we had free time, I would text one of my teammate friends in soccer or in football and just be like, hey, you free for an interview? So it was very low budget and low quality, but it got me into the world of what it's like to conduct an interview. And so when I found out Eastlink Community TV did sports, I realized they had an office in Amherst, Nova Scotia, which is like 10, 15 minutes away, as you guys know. And I worked with the producer there, Joel Doucette, and he kind of took me to a few shoots and showed me how to work in ENG, and this is how we edit, and kind of just opened my eyes to what it looks like to work in the industry. So I'm forever grateful for him because that relationship, I got to know others at Eastlink, and it turned into a full-time job. So I'm grateful that I got my foot in the door and learned as much as I could.
So I think a big breakthrough in your career was in 2021 of March, you became the first woman to do play-by-play coverage for a QMJHL game. How were you told that you were going to do the play-by-play, and maybe just take us through the day altogether?
Yeah. So at the time, our full-time play-by-play, Kevin Northup, who's the voice, and I'll always admire him. He was such a big influence for me. He's now he's in Yarmouth back at CJLS, does the morning show and covers some of the Mariners stuff. He was the play-by-play voice for Eastlink at the time, and I had done play-by-play a year, for the year or two before that, doing MHL, doing high school girls soccer, but the QMJHL was our biggest property at the time, especially the Mooseheads. So he ended up stepping away from the job, so that brought a vacancy. And so myself and Matt Gillets were kind of sharing the role, and it just ended up the next game on our schedule was a Q game, and it was our director at the time, Brett Smith, said, give it a try. Here's your game. Good luck. I think you'll be great. And I didn't know at the time that was the first by any means. It was others that kind of brought it to our attention. And so I think I had a few weeks to prepare for it. I actually had a concussion like a month before from snowboarding. So I still wasn't even really fully back to work. Like I still kind of had to, look at the computer screen, rest, do my work, rest. So still kind of in that type of routine. And I had a couple weeks to prepare for it, and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And I had Tara Sloan reach out, and I got to be on her show, and just incredible opportunities. People really wanting to promote that this was happening. So I got more and more nervous as that day was coming. And I woke up that day, and my color commentator Logan Delaney was so awesome with me the whole day. I just remember before he went to air, he's like. You'll be fine. Whatever you do, just don't swear, and it's all going to be okay. And he's right. That was great advice. But even better advice that I got was the night before from Leah Hextall. She called me and said, she knows what it's like, first and foremost, to kind of have the weight of your gender on your shoulders in these big moments, and just trust yourself. You've earned this opportunity, and be present. And I remember I wrote it on a little sticky note when I went to the game the next day, I kind of held it up right next to my notes. Just be present, be in the moment, don't get too far ahead of yourself. It's one play at a time, one period at a time. And I, to this day, have not watched back that game, and I'm okay with that. I don't ever want to watch it back. I have grown a lot since then, but I think the biggest thing in this industry is the only way you're going to learn is by trying, and you have to have the courage to put yourself out there. Because certainly the game I called then is nowhere near the kind of hockey game I call now, but you have to start somewhere. So
yeah.
So, I mean, how much is confidence a factor? I mean, like, it's like any job you do, hockey player any job in life, confidence means a lot. What's it like that with maybe doing play-by-play too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you're not confident in what you know or what you're saying, it as a viewer, you can tell kind of. I think that's a big piece to it, just being able to put together a smooth broadcast. But I think also for yourself to be in the right headspace, to be in that environment and trust yourself and trust your commentator partner and your production crew at a whole. So I would say confidence is something I've learned. It's certainly hard to, that saying of fake it till you make it is certainly something you have to adopt when you're doing something new, and you just have to put your best foot forward. So I've had a lot of new in my career over these last few years, a lot of firsts. And so it's learning as I go and being patient with myself, but knowing that I've certainly earned every opportunity along the way. So to trust myself, but that's easier said than done,
Yeah. It's hard to get that mentality of, oh, just go with it and it'll be fine. Just be confident and just hope nothing goes wrong. And it always seems like something does, but you just let it, nobody even notices.
Yeah.
Your hardest critic is yourself, right? So
oh yeah, there's things that I finished a game or finished a production and I'm mad at myself over something, and then you get the text from my mom, great interview, sweetie, that was awesome. So for general viewers, there's things that they may not pick up on that people in the industry are certainly more aware of. I think to this day, you guys are probably the same. You watch interviews or you watch broadcasts with a certain lens now, and it's kind of never really the same, just because now you kind of understand what goes into creating these amazing shows. So it's hard to kind of flip off that switch and just maybe be in the moment sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenzie, it wasn't long after that you really started to take off. You started covering the Women's World Championship, the Olympics, you did the World Juniors, and now you're covering the Montreal Canadiens. If you had one piece you can give to young women out there to be the next Kenzie Lalonde, what would you tell them?
Ooh, that's really good advice. I would say find opportunities, whether that's going to a hockey game and pretending to doing the play-by-play and a voice audio, like on a voice memo on your phone, watching the play, describing it as if you're calling a game just to yourself. I think that's a really great, easy way to learn on your own time. So yeah, try and find your own opportunities. I'm lucky that community television is still alive and well in the Maritime, so I had the luxury of learning a full production on the airwaves of local programming. So I kind of had that accelerated knowledge at an early phase in my career. But I hear it often, people saying, oh, like I want to interview athletes or I want to be the play-by-play of a team. And it's like, awesome. So if you want to, interview athletes, well, maybe just start interviewing your friends on YouTube, or going, if you're a member of your own hockey team, like maybe start running your own social accounts. Like the best way to get into this is to do it. That's the only way you're going to learn. So, it's kind of like people who want to write, like the only way to best start writing is to start, you know what I mean?
Right.
And give yourself permission to let that your first draft of stuff or your first interview suck. Like my first year, like I was kind of saying, that first QMJHL game I called, I'm sure is garbage, but you have to start somewhere, and you have to have the confidence to be able to put yourself out there and try. And it's at the expense of other people watching and listening and learning, but that's the only way you yourself are going to learn. So you have to dive into things. I think that's my big piece of advice, is you have to just try and get yourself out there.
I think it's funny, like I mean, when me and Tanner started, we started doing it because, you know, we want to build connections, you know, get to meet people and stuff like that. And the first interview we did was Alex Grant. He played a couple games in the NHL. He was with Ottawa, their AHL team for a while, but we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, we just wing it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, I don't look back at it either because I mean, I don't. It's probably pretty bad, but he was good about it. So
exactly. But that's awesome. Like, you have to start somewhere in everything in life. So you might as well just, you know, put your feet on the ground and try.
Just go with it. But okay, so looking at, you know, now you're working for TSN. So let's look at how did that transition happen to get the job at TSN, and what was it like kind of going from the Maritimes to working for a big company like, you know, they're owned by Bell. So what is that transition like?
Yeah, I'm lucky that I had an opportunity to go first work for them at the World Championships in 2021 in the bubble in Calgary. So that was my first ever experience, introduction with them, working on their airwaves, and that was just an unbelievable experience. COVID Atlanta, you know, bubble aside, to be locked up in that hotel with them, if you will, for 2.5 weeks, there's no better training grounds for me in that way, to see how everyone worked and to watch Rod Black and Cheryl work in the booth together and see how much fun they have, and getting to know Tessa Bonham and Carla McLeod, who's gone on to do amazing things with the national team, Czechia's national team. So I'm so grateful that I had that first introduction with them, and I, you know, was able to stick around, keep working at Eastlink, and go and do some women's hockey for TSN on a freelance basis. And then with all the changes that happened, Sarah Oleski leaving TSN, that opened a few doors, and I went through the application process and was lucky enough to wind up here in Montreal on a full-time basis, covering the Canadiens and the Alouettes in the summer, and then also doing women's hockey. So for me, that's the big piece that I'm so lucky I still get to do. And as the game continues to grow, and with the professional team on the horizon, I'm lucky to have my feet in all these properties, and in many different roles, doing play-by-play, being a reporter, and doing interviews on properties like World Junior. So I've certainly hit the jackpot over this last year, and I just hope to keep the ball rolling. It's been really fun.
So let's talk about the Habs a little bit. It's the middle of August. Is the hockey buzz starting to pick up around the city again? I know we had a couple trades in the last few weeks, so
the hockey buzz never goes away in Montreal.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it's great with the, you know, hearing a few weeks ago with the acquisition of Jeff Petrie, there was that understanding that, I think Kent Hughes has more up his sleeve, and as we learned just a few days ago, he sure did, as he's off to Detroit, which certainly is a landing ground that makes sense. Being a Michigan guy, knowing that he puts, you know, family at the top of his priority, and having a chance to go home. I think Petrie landed in an unbelievable spot. I haven't seen much of Lindstrom and what he'll bring to the table. Another young right shot defender, so that's excellent. And I think just the breakdown of what they ended up having to pay in the end of this, was $2.3 million on it all, to offload Hoffman, to offload Pitlick, and to gain a young prospect in Lindstrom, and also to think they have DeSmith and Leger as well. So a young, you know, goaltender and winger as well. I think it was an excellent deal by Kent Hughes, and I think he's gaining a lot of respect here in Montreal. And the moves he's making, they're all reasonable in price, to lock in Cole Caulfield for a long term. I really think Suzuki and Caulfield are the next Taves. Thank you. Taves and Kane duo. When you look at dynamic duos that are evolving in the next generation, I think they can be that here in Montreal. So I think they got a little extra edge, healthy. I think that'll be a big thing. To see a healthy Canadiens team to start here in September will be a breath of fresh air.
And looking at that trade too with Petrie, Kent Hughes has been pretty transparent on what he's been doing. That this was a little different, where no press conference after the first when he acquired Petrie. Did you think he was going to stay there before camp, or did you think he was going to be flipped?
Yeah, I figured he was off somewhere, because typically we do hear from the players. We hear from Kent Hughes after that. That was kind of a first indication that, oh, I think there's more here. And the fact that he had a 15 team no trade list makes it feel that Kent Hughes is going to do right by him and make sure he does land in a place that makes sense for his next chapter in his career. So to hear from Hughes, he kind of let us know that yesterday. Oh God, the days are blending. Paul Byron doesn't look like he'll lace up ever again. Might be moving into a more front office role. I think that's awesome. We always see his kids running around at all the games. The Byron family is integrated well into Montreal here. It's so I think having him around the team and player personnel role or whatever it may be for him, I think will be a great piece for the organization to keep him around.
So do you think that Kent Hughes has another deal up his sleeve before the season starts?
Yeah, maybe. I think, it sounds like they're not going to move Carey Price to LTIR until the season begins. So they might need to make one more shift, whether that isn't just a young prospect moving someone out in order to make it cap friendly makes sense to me. So I think it could be another trade, not in any high volume regard, but maybe just to make sure the money makes sense for Montreal, maybe doing one more release just to make it even.
Well, and you got 3 goaltenders right now too. That's the big
question.
I'm
very interested to see if Samuel Montembeault will get the nod to be the to start off this season. The way the NHL moving, in my opinion, is you really do have a 1A, 1B. That notion of one player playing all 80 plus games is kind of not the structure anymore. No. So I think we'll see Allen and Montembeault flip-flop. But I do think they'll probably give Montembeault the bigger games to see if he can rise to the occasion, to see if he can be that 1B guy moving forward. So this is a big year for him on his final year of his contract. But as we've heard Kent Hughes say in the past, he's eager to have him around. So it'll just be maybe for how many years and for how much money is on the table for Montembeault.
I think Jake Allen here's a local boy. It's good. I think they're the perfect tandem together. Allen seems like a really team-friendly guy. I mean, he does a lot for the community. Perfect guy to go with him.
He's awesome. Getting to know him a little bit in the room. He was supposed to be at the golf tournament, wasn't he?
I think he was originally.
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he's someone who knows his role. He knows that he's part of that responsibility is to help the younger goaltenders get ready, and like Caden Primo and Montembeault, and I think he really does provide that perfect vocal component to quite a young locker room.
Yeah. So Montreal has quite a few prospects coming up the pipeline right now. So, and training camp's right around the corner. So is there any player that you are specifically looking at going into training camp?
Yeah, I think someone that still is top of mind for me, and being a Maritime guy, is watching the trajectory of Justin Barron. With getting rid of Edmondson, they want to run with their young guys. So we'll see Harris and Gooley play top 4 minutes. So will there be space for Justin Barron? Will he be in the fold, or Jack Guy, Kovacevic, whether Lindstrom is top 7, I'm not sure, but I'll be interested to see what his minutes look like if he'll start the season with Montreal moving forward. And I think Owen Beck as well, coming off his year, the run with the Petes, how he can work in the centering role if maybe they do try him on the wing. But I think they have exciting young prospects. So I kind of have my eyes on Owen Beck and Barron for that regard. And I think also Slafkovsky, if we want to go into the big fold of what this season up and down may look like for Slafkovsky, if they give him the runway, as Marty St. Louis has certainly given him up until injury, was to learn. There's no better place to learn than to be in the NHL. So if that'll continue to be his game plan moving forward.
I think it's interesting too, is you mentioned Justin Barron, but Thomas, you'd have to tell me now, I forget now, but Montreal and their organizations have so many Maritimers right now.
Yeah, Riley Kidney's another one they got in the pipeline coming up.
Kidney.
Alex Newhook will suit up, which is great.
Yeah, yes. And then you got a few in Laval.
Yeah, right? Yeah. There's a couple there that aren't signed right now, but they have quite a few.
It's quite a few down. Connection. They know where to get the good players from. And now they
Well
got Kenzie
put.
Lalonde. So
um, but with Slavkovsky, does he thrive on the pressure in Montreal? Because there's a lot of pressure on him. I know people are already on social media already saying, "Oh, this kid's not going to be as good as he was." But I mean, he's only, what is he, 19, something like that. I mean, he's just a kid yet. Does he mind the pressure in Montreal?
I think I, I think he's loving it. It's
Is he?
certainly challenging. We go back to the draft and what happened with this fan base and David Reinbacher. And that's something you never really want to see. That's the greatest moment of a young athlete's career, to have their name called. And he's an excellent prospect. We saw him at the World Juniors. I think he's an exciting young defender. There is an element to joining this franchise, and Kent Hughes knows that. Marseille St. Louis knows that, and they always speak to it. It's an element they don't overlook when they bring in new young guys to the team. Is that weight of playing in this market, and all players are aware of that. But I think Slavkovsky has embraced it, and I think it all starts with that confidence of Marty St. Louis in his ear to give him that space to try, to fail, and that's okay. I think to him, that's the dynamic that really only matters most. And I think it's been, he's had to grow up really quickly when you think of coming over to North America, to Canada, to Montreal. I mean, that is a huge adjustment, learning the language, still being young. And so I think this next year will be big for him to find his own on the ice, but I think also to continue making sure he has that confidence off the ice. But I've seen nothing but positivity beaming off of Slavkovsky after speaking with him in the room over the year.
So looking at this upcoming season, what do you consider a successful year for the Habs?
Yeah, I think staying healthy. Let's put that up at the top of the list. I really would like to see Sean Monahan rise up and see what style of play he can get to. We've seen him hit that threshold before back with Calgary, so I want to see him get back there. But you look at towards the end of that season, considering they were almost a Laval Rocket team towards the end of that season, and to go toe to toe with the Rangers, with Pittsburgh, Florida, those games are always good. They were never not in the fight, and I hope that can continue to be a style of play they have moving forward. Whether they start off strong or not, they always found a way to finish the game. So maybe having a better start and finding themselves more offensively, I think, will be really important, and making sure to just keep their top six on rotation. So I'm excited to see Sean Monahan play a little more, Suzuki and Caulfield get back to their ways, and just staying in the fight of all these games. We heard Kent Hughes say a couple of days ago, the anticipation is they will be better. They certainly have the personnel to do so, but they're still a very young group. So they're trending in the right direction. So hopefully it's only up from here.
And you mentioned Sean Monahan. I mean, last season when he was with the team actually performed pretty well. It was after he went out where they started to notice they started losing a few more games. So is he maybe one of those locker room guys that, is a voice?
Yeah, he has certainly echoed his, the need to share his experiences with other players. I think through his injury as well, being able to continue to relate to other players that were going through it. I mean, we would always pan up to the rafters where the guys would sit when they were hurt, and it was almost a party by the end of the season. There was like 10 or 12 of them up there. It was ridiculous. And so I'm sure he was able to really help a lot of those guys through that challenging time, as someone who's been through it for quite a few years. But I think a lot of his leadership comes on the ice, and his playmaking ability, and his awareness to be an effective source on the power play. I think that's something he wants to continue to be a threat on and get reps in, is to be a power play player. So I'm sure that'll be a goal of his this year.
Well, moving on from the Canadiens, I got a few more questions about you, Kenzie. And one big thing is, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but you do cover some of the CFL and the Alouettes games. So growing up, did you watch football, or was this kind of something you just kind of had to learn as you go? Because I know you played hockey, but I'm just kind of interested on the history there.
Yeah, I grew up, the Rough Riders were still around in Ottawa. So we had gone to a few games of those, but we certainly didn't have football on at the house. It was always hockey. And it was actually, in terms of maybe diving into a little more, the sport was when I went to Mount Allison University. So because they did not have a men's hockey team, our equivalent was the men's football team.
Yeah.
So we got to know a lot of those guys really well, and there's still a group of us that are best friends to this day. So we would constantly go to their games and hang out with them, and just naturally I learned more about the sport, cared more about the sport just through association with them. So it was fun to watch a lot of friends get drafted by the CFL back when we played. So I think that was where it kind of accelerated. And so to move on, I did a little stint with youth sports. I had a chance to cover the Vanier Cup in 2017 when Western played Laval and Western won, and that was huge. Laval has always been such a strong football team. And so to be a part of that, speak with the players in that moment was really, really fun. So I never thought I would one day cover the CFL, let alone the Alouettes. But it's been a good change of pace and a lot of fun. And I'm still seeing some Mounties, scattered in through these teams, or guys that played in the AUS, like Keon Julian Grant right now is the top receiver for the Alouettes. He's hurt. But he's from St. FX University. So him and I we're constantly talking about St. FX and the AUS. So always having those, those home connections take you through work and life, and you always run into someone that you may have a lot in common with. So it continues to be present in the CFL.
And going from hockey to CFL, how do you transition that as a broadcaster?
Yeah, my role is definitely different for a CFL game versus my role as a reporter for the Montreal Canadiens, because in a production for CFL, I'm also a host, or I do sideline hits in intermission. Right. Sorry, so I'll do intermission interviews. I'll also do in-game hits. I'll do pre-game stuff. So in terms of the broadcast requirements, I'm used much more in our CFL coverage versus our Montreal Canadiens coverage. Right. So it's been fun to do sideline hits and incorporate elements like that I don't get to do in a hockey capacity. So it's been fun. It's been fun. And I think also just yesterday I got like a sunburn going to practice. So that doesn't happen at the Bell Center or in Brossard. So it's been a good change of pace. The guys are really fun.
Frostbite or sunburn, like it's a tough call.
Yeah, I'm sure Panthers reporters have a different response, but covering the Canadiens, it's either frostbite. Yeah.
So the last question I got for you is, it's kind of the off season. Yeah, I know you still got the Alouettes, but what do you do in your off time, and what do you do during the summer in Montreal?
Well, it's such a good question. Well, it was fun when Formula One was here. I mean, I didn't get to go to the track during the event, but weeks up you can go and bike walk it. It is open to the public on a daily basis. So the city came alive that weekend. I had friends in town. We went, they closed down St. Catherine Street just to have all these activations, and there's bands. So every weekend there's something going on in Montreal. So if I'm home, I try and go to it. Unfortunately, I missed Just for Laughs. That was a couple weekends ago. But the guys, I never do groceries anymore. I'm constantly eating out. There's so many good restaurants. So I'm kind of a foodie now.
I'm waiting for a new Instagram that's just like Kenzie Lalonde just eating around Montreal or something.
Hey, I'd love that. That would be great.
I got a few more before we go. My big thing is, because I hear a lot of reporters talking about prep and getting ready for game day. So I'm curious, on a game day as Kenzie Lalonde, what do you do to prep for a game?
For a Montreal Canadiens game?
Sure. If you Montreal, CFL, any sporting event, how do you prep normally?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different if I'm doing play-by-play versus reporting, because those are two totally different roles. For reporting, so a typical game day, I'll wake up, go to the morning skate. That's at the Bell Center here. So I can walk there, which is nice. It's only like a 15-minute walk. See who's out there, see who's not out there. There's, all of us will sit in the stands and watch practice. And then we can go in and speak to a few of the players and then kind of get your storylines for the day. Come back for in between that and game time, if it is a TSN broadcast, we'll figure out what our pregame is, who I'll do for an over the boards interview, and all those things are kind of get it sorted out on game day when you're speaking with the producers back in Toronto. And yeah, and I think it's again just getting your storylines together, identifying that pregame player, and then as soon as you're kind of into the game, it's what happens. Then you'll identify the player you want to speak with. Try and get a free hot dog up at the Bell Center if possible. If I can run up in time, grab a hot dog, run back down. That's my dinner usually on a game day.
And this is eating out. This is foodies with Kenzie Lalonde.
Do they have the best hot dogs in the NHL?
I agree. Yes, 100%. I haven't been to many NHL rinks just because we don't travel. But the few I've been to, I don't even think I've ordered hot dogs at another arena. But I would say yes, the Montreal Canadiens should win best hot dog in the NHL.
Gee.
So, and then another thing I'm really curious about is you grew up a Sens fan, which is still special to me. But and now
hard to come by.
They are right
especially
now.
In the Maritimes.
They are right now. And now you cover the Montreal Canadiens. How difficult is it going from a Sens fan to be covering Montreal? Like they had such a rivalry. Like I remember they had such a rivalry. So how do you change that much?
Well, I would need to admit something. I would say I'm a secondary Canadiens fan because the team in Ottawa only came in '93, right? So before that, my family was Montreal Canadiens fan. My dad is from Chicoutimi, St. Bruno, Montreal region. So our whole side of the family is Canadiens fans. It was only when our immediate family moved to Ottawa, did we become Ottawa Senators fans. So it's actually pretty cool. My extended family is so proud of me and can't believe that, I get to be in the heat of all of this covering their favorite organization. So it's not that hard, I guess. It is a franchise I think all hockey fans admire when you grow up and fall in love with the NHL. It's always a franchise that sticks out to you. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity. It's fun. The guys are young and it keeps things exciting. Yeah.
Well, I just had to ask that because I was always curious. But no, I don't have anything else. Thomas, do you have anything?
No, that's all I had.
No, perfect. Thank you very much, Kenzie. We do appreciate you taking the time because we know you're really busy in Montreal. You got to hit all the restaurants, so we're holding that up from you.
Yeah, guys, I got to get to my Rizzo.
DoorDash tonight.
What's the best restaurant? Where's the place to go?
Well, what kind of food?
I don't know anything. What's the go-to place?
Okay, so I love big salad girl. So Mandy Salad is a really great little joint. It was started by two young women. They have about 4 different locations now in Montreal. So I recommend Mandy's for salads. Oh no. My favorite cafe is just up the road. It's called Mama. It's really good. They have very good coffees and treats. Of course, Schwartz is your best place to get a smoked meat sandwich. But I've also had a really good smoked meat poutine at Dunn's. So I would also, it's good to have at 3 a.m. in the morning is what I'll say.
Yeah.
And that's post-game snack.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just on here trying to get sponsors, Tanner.
Yeah, pretty much. No, perfect, Kenzie. We really appreciate you taking the time and we hope you enjoy the rest of your summer.
Of course, guys. You too. I'll see you again next year.
Yeah, for sure.